Hello everyone. So I'm working on my boat again, and there's a saying that the two happiest days in the life of a boat owner is the day he buys it and the day he sells it. Well, those people are full of crackers. I've also heard them referred to as a money pit, and that's probably a little bit true, unless, like myself, you're cheap, you fix things, you replace things, and you do it yourself. Someone would have charged me a lot of money for the work I'm about to describe to you, and this is very simple. I was at Oneida Lake, and my navigation light failed me. The red light is the starboard side, the green light is the port side. This goes on the front of the boat, on the bow, and people from a great distance can look at your boat and they could say, okay, this guy's going in this direction. And there's also a light that goes on the back of the boat, and that's called an anchor light. And that one stays on at all times at night. And this one has to be on if it's dark and you're underway, which means you're moving. So this failed me. And this is it right here, actually. This light right here has been on my boat for a few years. I replaced it. I liked it a lot because it has the navigation lights, but it also has this little button right here, and you push that, and that little light there is tiny, but it lights up a very nice area in the front of my boat where I'm doing a lot of stuff there all the time. It's a utility light. Well, this is easy to replace, but gosh darn it, this part of it was not easy to replace. They actually don't make these anymore with 3 pins and 3 wires here. 3 pins and 3 wires is what you need for this light. Most of them are these simple ones with just one, there's just one bulb in there that lights 2 color lenses. So all it needs is these 2 wires right here, but you don't have a utility light. These are the little pigtails that come out of these. So this one right here is 23 or 24 years old. It's a Perco. I bought another Perco to replace it. This is also a Perco. And in New York, when this broke off for the 3rd time, you can see the mess there that I keep gluing it back together to save money and just to be able to go do what I want to do. I don't want to wait. So I purchased one of these at Walmart, but this one was lent to me by a friend for temporary use in New York, so I could go fishing. And we spent a good part of a morning running to a parts store where they said they had one of these with 3 pins, and when I got there, it turned out she was mistaken. She had looked at it, and it looked like 3 wires, but it was only 2 coming out of there. She didn't take it out of the package. And we really wasted a lot of time. So we attached this one, and I borrowed this light from my good friend and was able to go fishing for the rest of that week that I was in New York. However, as soon as I got home, I ordered a new one online. Now, this is the brand new one. You can see that it's complete. These 2 are identical. This broke right off. So I took the old one from here and I put it in a vise because I didn't care about it. I was going to throw it away. I was going to throw this little broken piece away. So I put it in a vise and I used a tool to knock the pins out. You can't see those pins in there, but there are 2 pins that are attached to these wires, and they come out in that direction there. This is the tool I used to pound them out. Goes in there like that, and it's big enough that it's not going to slip around. It's going to stay right on top of that pin, which is very small. And I put it like that in the vise, as I said before. Put this in there, and I tapped it very gently on the top with a hammer, and these came right out. Once they're inserted in this hole, and you can see that these are made with 3 holes for these pins. They just don't put a wire in it. They're too cheap to put this wire in there for people who might need it. There's another observation I made, and that is that this original Perco base light is much better quality. This is like super lightweight. This is cheap. They were so much better in the day. And just the construction is just not the same. This is light duty here, and this is solid. I mean, this is solid. This is light duty. So I didn't want to damage this thing. When I reinserted this pin, you can see that the pin is knurled right there. So when it goes into this hole right here, it catches pretty good. I might put a drop of glue in there, probably not. We'll see how it feels, but I didn't want to damage it, so I made this. I drilled a 3/4 inch hole right here, and I'll be able to put this in there like this. Now, this pin will go in the opposite direction of the way it came out, so I'll put it in right there like that. And once it's lined down in there, it's lined up nicely, I'll put this on something with a hole in it. In fact, I have a bench over there I'm going to use. And I will tap this down that way just until it's perfectly lined up with the other 3 pins. And you can see the line up here, and you'll also be able to see it right here. When all 3 pieces of metal are right near the edge there at the same place, I should be able to get a good connection. And I'll be able to use these lights, which are still readily available online, if this one ever dies on me. And I'll always have that utility light that I've just really come to like. So again, this is my board I designed, to use a fancy word. This fits in there perfectly. There's a hole on my bench so that everything can hang down in there, nothing gets damaged. I am going to use a very small hammer. I don't want to be too aggressive. And this thing right here won't be moving around and skipping. Now, again, this wire, when I took it out, I pounded from the top. With a tool like this one, I pounded from the top and pushed that pin out the other way. It came out that way. And going in is exactly the opposite. You can see the 3 holes in there in this light. Goes in like that. Hold it all nice and steady. Be patient and tap gently. Going in, and that's in there solid. It's not going anywhere. It's not all the way in, but I can feel that it's really taking hold. You want it wedged in there real nice so that you don't have problems later, and that's exactly what it's doing. That's almost all the way in. I'm not hitting it hard. It may sound loud, but I'm really not hitting it hard. And now you can see that all 3 of those pins and the pigtails are lined up perfectly with the end of this thing. I think I did good. These 2 wires here that came with this when it was set up for a simple light were black and white. Now, wires are color coded. For this new setup, this wire right here that wasn't present when I bought this is a hot wire. So it's white. I painted the white one over here black because these 2 are going to be put together and the circuit goes from here to there. Power comes in here, goes through the 2 separate lights that are on here, navigation, utility. So it works very differently. I don't want to get confused, so I painted my white wire black. I'm going to test it on this little battery right here. Let's see if it works. So just using this little 12-volt battery, you can see that my utility light is working. Look how bright that is. It really makes a huge difference in the dark of night. And over here, this light's working just fine. So we did good, and I'm happy. I have yet to install this on the boat. We'll go through that in a minute. This is plastic weld. I mixed up the world's tiniest bit right here. Comes in 2 parts, and when you mix them, you got to use them really quick. Now, this is extra, but I firmly believe in this. On my old one, these wires in here, you can see the metal exposed right there. You can see the metal exposed. And where the wire contacted that, it's soldered in there. And what happened was, it turned green. Well, that's what happens to wires when they're exposed to the elements. So I'm putting this on there for a little bit extra protection. And again, most people wouldn't do this, but I believe this is a really good safeguard against that corrosion. And the wires, they just become weak with movement. The wire that I salvaged and installed on this thing is a little more susceptible to breaking. Well, this JB Weld will create a real solid base. Not JB Weld. This welding stuff will create a real solid base right down there that will prevent the wires from even wiggling around a little bit. You don't have to do this. I can't make you do this. But it's what I believe is best. And maybe, just maybe, I'll get another 40 years out of this one. I'll let you know in 40 years how I make out. I'll be 108 years old. Another additional step is that I'm putting this shrink wrap on all three of these wires and moving it all the way down as far as I can. And that welding has begun to dry already. That DevCon firmed up very nicely, and now I'm going to shrink this shrink wrap stuff here. It is so important for anything on a boat or a trailer or a car, anything that's going to be exposed outside to the elements, especially moisture, it needs to be sealed. You can't just have a connection that allows things to be exposed. Some folks will use these simple crimping connectors, wire connectors that you just crimp. They're open there, and you can see the wire, and you can see the metal connector in there, and they're open there, you can see the wire, and you can see the metal connector in there. Moisture gets in there, the elements, it's just going to cause a problem. You'll be out doing something, and all of a sudden some device will fail. And it's because this connection is no longer good, because it was done like this. I found a bunch of these on my boat. And on all the trailers that I've owned, I had a motorhome, several trailer campers. I've had a bunch of utility trailers and enclosed trailers. But people just connected with these, and then problems occur. The brake lights go out, the turn signals go out, something goes out. That's ridiculous. They make a very convenient connector now that is waterproof for marine applications and anything outside. Not only is it waterproof, but you just need to put the wire in here and the wire in there. You heat it with a cigarette lighter or a heat gun, and it shrinks it, and it automatically welds it together right in there. And those are nice. I don't have any. I'm going to do it the old-timey way. If you find wires on any of your stuff where there are several of these, for instance, this wire needs to go from here to there, and they didn't have enough wire, so they put this on, and then later on over here, you find yet another one. I try to use a complete wire with none of these connectors all the way from the terminal end to the other terminal end, and it will only have these things if that's absolutely necessary, as in the case of this. This has to be connected to the boat, but the wire that I connected to on the boat should go all the way from here, all the way across the boat to the other side where the battery and the fuse box are. That's just the right way to do it. Wire is expensive. I'm cheap, so I save it. You see that I have all these wires that I've saved from previous jobs, and I have an entire bucket full of them. So do that, be cheap, save money, by golly, do it yourself. These are the two main lines, a ground and a power supply. This is the power supply, and this is the ground, that go all the way from the bow here, the front of the boat, all the way back to the stern, more or less, where my battery and fuse box are located. And you can see that this one right here is properly connected to an extension. I think I did this one. This is properly connected to an extension. It goes from a larger wire to a smaller wire that better accommodates the new device I'm installing. That's a very small wire, pigtail, that comes out of the back of that base. This one right here has been done 1, 2, 3 times. These are not good ones. I'm going to replace it. I'm going to cut it right here and put a small wire. Instead of 3 of these, there'll just be 1 of these. And actually, if you look at this, there were 4 of them. This right here is one of those marine shrink tube self-soldering connectors that I mentioned earlier. This had been done correctly a long time ago, probably when the boat was designed, for all I know. The boat is 34 years old. Hold on, 24 years old. So I'm going to cut that. I'm going to solder it to the other wire, a wire of this diameter here, smaller, and I'm going to put a shrink tube over it, heat it with my cigarette lighter, and it'll be absolutely waterproof. That's the right way to do it. I stripped this wire here, and I'm going to take somewhere around 1/4 of all the strands off of it. You don't want your connection to be too fat. It's going to be the fatness of whatever 2 wires you solder together, as well as the solder. And let's get some wire for that. It should be white or gray for the ground. Found some white wire, the correct diameter for me for this project. I'm going to take, now see, they're both a little bit lighter than they were. I took 1/4 more or less of the strands off. I'm going to twist them together like that. Got my solder and my soldering iron ready. Okay. If you have trouble trying to twist these together, strip a little more line, maybe take a few more strands off. But just keep doing that till you've got a solid connection. You don't want this connection moving around while you're trying to solder it. Alright, let's solder it. I always do this soldering on a piece of wood. Get a little solder on there. You can heat the wires and then touch the solder to it. In this case, I'm in a hurry, so I just touch the solder. Let it melt on there. That connection is neat and clean, and it's permanent. No, there's no other monkey business. I'm doing it right. You want to use the shrink wrap tube that fits the tightest to your wire, but still you're able to move it along, because I've got to get it to fit over this connection, which can be a little challenging. Now this is going on very nicely. I made a good choice. You want to get that just as much in the middle as you can, so that you have this shrunken tube going equally in both directions away from your soldering point, so that you get the best possible resistance to moisture getting in there. In 23 years, this connection will still be good. I have a bunch of them on the boat that have been there that long, and they're still good. It's these other cheap connections that really give me problems. Guys like this that I just removed. Okay, cigarette lighter. Shrink tube shrinks, grabs hold of the whole thing, and waterprooficizes it. A heat gun is good when you're in the wind, but I don't have one. Suppose I should consider the investment. And it's windy. And that looks really good. Before soldering this, I hooked these wires up loosely, just twisted them together, and I'm testing it, and I see that my utility light is working, and my navigation light is working. So black to black, white to white, that worked. I've done something correctly. Same process here. I chose a shrink tube that's just the right size. Stripped a few bits of wire off each end so that the connection's a little smaller than it would have been. Has to be neat, pretty. Some of what I do is just me being OCD, so you don't have to do everything I do, but I highly recommend it. Yeah, I got that excess solder off, and I'm going to have a neat joint. Shrink tube went over very nicely. Make sure that joint is right in the middle. Put some heat to it. Shrinks right up. That looks pretty. This connection is going to be a little bit different because both of these wires are connecting to this one right here. So this is going to be a little bulkier. That means two things. First of all, I chose a somewhat larger shrink tube. But when I'm done, I'm also going to take the extra step of wrapping this with black tape. Because this seal right here, with those two, even though this shrinks, it leaves a tiny opening there. We daresn't let that happen. And that's a Pennsylvania way of talking. Everything is soldered. The 2-into-1 has its shrink tube on it. And like I said, because there's two going into one, it's not as watertight a fitting. So I'm going to go ahead and put this black tape on here. Now, I decided when I'm done doing that, I'm going to test this, of course. I would have tested it no matter what. But I'm going to take an extra step of taping all these together just so that it's neat under there. Nobody should have to look at this for another 20 years, so all this extra tape won't be that much work for the next guy. This is really, really good. I'm very pleased with the work I've done here. Now let's see if it works. That is important. There's the lights. The utility light, the navigation light. We're good to go. Now I'm going to assemble all of this, and then I'm going to tape it. That goes like that, and then this goes on top of that. My little slidey. This is the door that you can close so that water and moisture doesn't get in there and dirt when you're not using it. And this goes on top. And it had these black screws in it. They're all rusty. So I bought some beautiful, shiny new stainless steel screws. They're expensive, but they're going to look really good. In a moment of clarity, I realized I didn't need to tape this all together. I'm just going to do all this extra wire with a zip tie. This is, after all, why they exist. Okay, that's about as neat as it gets. That looks really good. Always do my last tightening by hand. Things like this, you can actually do more harm than good by tightening it too much. That looks pretty. Yeah, it feels good. Isn't that nice? Now this unit right here has a couple of screws that are stripped out. Oh, Sam, do this right. A couple of these screws here are stripped out. I'm going to replace all of them with nice, shiny, new stainless steel screws. I was able to obtain screws that are exactly the same size head. No, they're not. Very close. Oh, be gosh darn, he told me they were the same. Well, it kind of doesn't matter. What I'm going to do is put the larger one in the stripped holes and the smaller ones in the not stripped holes. It's going to look good. Let's come back to that. And this is a thing of beauty. You don't have to be cheap like me and try and save money all the time. But it works, and I get a lot of satisfaction out of doing something myself. I'm retired now. I need to find a way to fill my days, and I'm not allowed to go fishing every day. So sometimes I just fix the stuff I need for my fishing. You can do the same. If a knucklehead like me can do this, anybody can do it. Good luck, y'all. This is dielectric grease. Put it on your electrical connections and it protects them. Especially, it's very useful for these things that we expose to the elements. Tune-up dielectric grease from Permatex. Test over and over again. Navigation light's working fine, and so is this utility light. I could not be happier. A switch on my dash turns these lights on. That's my anchor light right there. It's on a 3.5-foot pole. And there's a rule about how tall that light is supposed to be. This one has a 5-degree rake going backward. And the base that I had borrowed from Dennis did this, had a 5-degree angle to it. Didn't want that for the front. And here in front is the navigation light. Green on the starboard side, red on the port side. What mattered to me the most was this little light back here. It lights up the whole front of my boat when I'm trying to fish in the dark. It's so helpful. This is what it looks like without that light on. This is what it looks like with the light on. Yeah, I'm so glad to have that. Okay, let's go fishing.